Today we're going to be focusing on the muscles of the upper extremity, otherwise known as the arm and forearm. Now, with this model you need to be a little bit careful because it is upside down. So please make sure that you go home and compare this model to the pictures in your texts or in your lab manuals. Let's start down here at the bottom with the deltoid muscle. The deltoid muscle is clearly visible here on the model, and it's named deltoid for its resemblance to the triangularly shaped Greek letter delta. This muscle is mainly responsible for abducting your arm, which is moving the arm laterally away from the midline of the body. Not too far away from the deltoid muscle we have this smaller muscle called the teres major. It actually does the opposite, which is to adduct the arm, which is to pull your arm closer to the body. Moving up from the deltoid muscle, we can see the muscles that move the forearm include the biceps brachii on the anterior surface and the triceps on the back. Triceps is named triceps because of its three heads, which are visible here, here, and here. So those are the muscles that move the forearm. Just to review, the biceps flexes the forearm, and on the back, the triceps extends the forearm. Moving on to the muscles that help to move the hand and the wrist. So if we turn the model around and examine the posterior side of the forearm, right now I'm pointing to the anterior, we can see right here this muscle is going to be called the extensor carpi radialis. It extends the wrist on the radial or the thumb side. Extensor carpi radialis extends the wrist on the thumb side. How can you remember where it is? It's located next to another muscle that you may or may not need to know from the anterior side called the brachioradialis. So the brachioradialis is here, and immediately next to it is the extensor carpi radialis. On the lateral side of the posterior forearm, we find a muscle that extends the wrist on the ulnar side, and this is called the extensor carpi ulnaris. You can trace its insertion right down close to the base of the little finger. In the very center is a muscle that extends all the way to the fingers themselves, and you can trace the tendons to the fingers. This muscle is called the extensor digitorum and extends your fingers. If we rotate the model and look at the anterior surface of the forearm, there's several muscles that we need to know there. Again, the best way to identify these muscles is to look for the tendons as they insert near the fingers. If we start at the little finger and find this tendon, we can trace it back to its muscle right here, which is going to be the flexor carpi ulnaris. This is the wrist flexor on the ulnar side or the little finger side. On the opposite side, if we go to the base of the thumb, we find another muscle that does something similar, which is called the flexor carpi radialis, and we can trace it all the way back to its muscle here from the base of the thumb. This flexes the wrist on the thumb side or the radial side. In the very center of the model is a muscle that is a little bit deep to all these flexors, and this is called the flexor digitorum superficialis. Some people get a little confused by the fact that it's called a superficial muscle when I told you had to go deep to find it. Well, it's called the flexor digitorum superficialis because it's the most superficial of the finger flexors, and it's located right here under the wrist flexors. And then finally, we can talk about muscles that pronate and supinate. Supination is basically going to be the position of your forearms in the anatomical position. Pronation would be the reverse. So there are two muscles that help you to supinate and to pronate. The pronator teres is the most clearly visible in the model. It's the small muscle right here, just in front of the indentation on the anterior surface of your elbow, which is called the antecubital fossa. The indentation is called that. This muscle is the pronator teres, and it helps you to pronate your hands or forearms. The muscle which does the opposite is the supinator, and to find it we need to go a little bit deep. So I'm going to remove some of the more superficial muscles here, and underneath you can actually find the supinator muscle here, which is directly opposite the pronator teres. And the fibers even run in complementary but opposite directions. So the pronator teres on the surface helps you to pronate, and the supinator muscle underneath on the opposite side helps you to supinate. And that completes the muscles of the upper extremity. Triceps brachii, biceps brachii, brachialis, deltoid, brachioradialis, brachialis, triceps brachii, deltoid, teres major, extensor carpi radialis, extensor carpi ulnaris, extensor digitorum, brachioradialis, flexor carpi radialis, brachioradialis, pronator teres, brachioradialis, pronator teres, supinator deep to the brachioradialis.